You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
What a beautiful day for horses in the morning.
You are listening to the #1 horse podcast in the world. Here is your entertaining look at the horse world and the people in it.
I'm Julie Broadway, president of the American Horse Council.
And I'm Emily Stearns, Health, Welfare, and Regulatory Affairs Liaison for the American Horse Council.
And you are listening to the special monthly American Horse Council episode of Horses in the Morning on the Horse Radio Network for January 2025. Good morning, Horse World, and Happy New Year!
It's time to hear from the American Horse Council in this monthly episode of Horses in the Morning.
We have a very special episode today focusing on the Army's Caisson Detachment of the 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment, known as the Old Guard. The Old Guard is the Army's oldest active-duty infantry regiment, responsible for a wide range of ceremonial duties, including guarding the tomb of the unknown soldier. The other official duty is a very special role that they perform to provide escorts for military funerals with a caisson. A caisson, if you're not familiar with that, is a horse-drawn military wagon that is used to transport a funeral casket.
The caisson wagon and its attendant soldiers are well known for its use at Arlington National Cemetery, which is located across the river from Washington, D.C., and where it's carried fallen soldiers and former U.S. presidents to their final resting burial.
I believe most of us have seen the somber pictures of the Old Guard's caisson platoon carrying deceased service members and rendering honors on the grounds of Arlington National Cemetery. It is a profoundly moving ceremony.
And really, unfortunately, that it has been suspended since May 2023. We'll begin with a quick explanation of the decision to temporarily pause the unit and how the American Horse Council became involved.
Well, a couple of years ago, I was contacted regarding troubling conditions for the horses at the Caisson Detachment. There were many contributing factors which we will address during the course of this conversation. But the takeaway is that the American Horse Council and the equine community have really rallied and rendered assistance in terms of resources and expertise to help the Army reestablish the horse-drawn funeral escorts.
And the decision to temporarily remove the Caisson Detachment from duty was a really difficult but necessary decision. And in recent years, 2 horses unfortunately had to be euthanized and many others had to be retired. And the caisson herd on this historic military installation had kind of deteriorated over the years, pretty much due in large part to the expansion of the cemetery, which led to a lot of reduced pasture. In addition, frequent turnover among the horse's caregivers, which we all know is really important, is an inevitable result of kind of deployments and reassignments. And this left gaps in knowledge and experience. And the equipment and the saddlery, which is historically accurate, was also kind of becoming obsolete.
So fast forward to July of 2024, and I was fortunate and very honored to be briefed on the ongoing progress being made by the Army. And I'm here to tell you the good news is that there has been significant progress. In recent testimony before Congress, Major General Trevor Breedenkamp, the commanding general of the Joint Task Force for the National Capital Region and the U.S. Army Military District of Washington, explained the milestones associated with the rehabilitation plan. It included facility renovation and land acquisition, horse procurement, horse health and fitness, horse and soldier training and assessment, and talent management. So our guests today, we're going to focus on 3 of those milestones as they are directly involved with the horse health and fitness, the horse and soldier training and assessment, and talent management.
So let's begin with the introductions. And our first guest is First Sergeant Garrett Rogers, who serves as First Sergeant for the Caisson Detachment and the Regimental Senior Medic. First Sergeant Rogers is a highly decorated senior non-commissioned officer who served as a line medic in Afghanistan for a 13-month tour. He was also deployed to Iraq, and immediately prior to serving the Caisson Detachment, he was attached to the Fort Belvoir Community Hospital as senior enlisted leader for the Education, Training, and Research Command. First Sergeant Rogers is from Allentown, Pennsylvania, and he has earned an Associate's of Science degree in Health Sciences and is currently working on his bachelor's degree in Sports and Health Science with a concentration in Strength and Conditioning. Military awards are numerous on top of everything else he's got going on and include Order of Military Medical Merit, the Defense Meritorious Service Medal, Meritorious Service Medal, Army Commendation Medal with Valorous Device, Army Commendation Medal with Stars, Combat Medic Badge, Expert Field Medic Badge, Parachutist Badge, Air Assault Badge, and that's just among many others.
Oh, so his chest is just decorated with all kinds of ribbons and colors and stuff. Yeah. I'm thinking, wow. Okay, so our other guest is Alec Whisler, and he serves as the lead trainer for the Army's Caisson Detachment. His passion for horses began at the age of 4. He's like all of us crazy horse people. After he went on a trip to Wyoming with his aunt and his uncle. At 13, Alex began working at a thoroughbred farm with his sister, where they both had the opportunity to work with a variety of horses and breeds. His experience in the equine industry is really vast. Alex later worked as an assistant trainer under Clancy and Ida McNabb of McNabb Livestock. During his time there, they had roughly 75 to 100 horses for sale or in training. He would have the opportunity to work with a variety of breeds, from large draft horses all the way down to small ponies. In the spring of 2020, he traveled to Lexington, Kentucky to participate in the Double Dan Horsemanship Certificate Program. So some of you may have seen him out there on YouTube or one of those things, under the renowned trainer Dan James, a lovely guy. Alex and his wife, Ashley, would go on to start a Pony Express Horsemanship USA in Clark, Wyoming, before taking his current position in 2023. So before we jump in, let's take a quick break to thank our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Smartpak. Our friends at Smartpak are on a mission to help support even more healthy horses and happy riders. That's why they carry everything you need, from brands you know and love to Smartpak exclusive supplements like their full family of Smart Flex joint supplements to all the tack essentials for your horse. Plus, they stand by all their products with a 100% happiness guarantee. I love a happiness guarantee, guys. Visit smartpak.com and find them on Instagram at Smartpak to discover how they can support your equestrian journey. Have a great ride. So listeners, let me begin with First Sergeant. We met when I toured the Caisson stables back in July of this year. And my first question is, give us some background on the role and the history of the Old Guard. I mean, the oldest of all the divisions, if I read that correctly.
Yeah, Julie, I think it'd take all day if I really tried to go into detail on everything historically with the 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment. You kind of touched on a few things in the very beginning, and I'll probably regurgitate a little bit of that, and then I'll kind of jump into something a little bit about the Caisson itself. So, the 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment, traditionally known as the Old Guard, is the oldest active duty infantry regiment in the United States Army, serving since 1784. The Old Guard's the official ceremonial unit and escort to the president. And more specifically, the Caisson Platoon started performing its mission in 1948 when the 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment was reactivated on Fort Myer. At the conclusion of World War II and then continued to execute its mission up until recently when the decision was made to suspend operations in order to kind of reevaluate the program, which you kind of alluded to a little bit and kind of jumped into some detail on. But
so just for fun, this isn't the first time you guys had to suspend, but you've suspended for other reasons. Tell me a little bit, if you know, have there been occasions in the history where we've had to say, hey, there's so much going on in the world, let's take a break?
To my knowledge, no.
No.
But only having been in the seat for about 12 months, I'm not familiar with anything as of, prior to January of this year when, and I wanted to mention it, January of this year was really a turning point for the Caisson. It was when the decision was made to take it from what most people will know it as the Caisson Platoon and turn it into the Caisson Detachment, which is a pretty historic moment for us, right? And what that means for the Caisson was it meant more attention, it meant more people, it meant specific oversight from a first sergeant commander with direct reporting criteria to the regiment as well as the commanding general of the MDW.
Oh, that's a big deal. Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Good for you guys. Good for you guys. Emily, you got the next question.
Yeah, so I think something our listeners will probably be wondering is how do you go from jumping out of an airplane as a medic to managing the caisson's unit horses and soldiers? I can't imagine there's a lot of horses parachuting with you out of those airplanes.
No, no. It's a really interesting question, and I've looked at the past 17 years of my career in the Army as almost like a bucket list. A list of bucket list items that I didn't even know were going to be kind of in my career path. And so coming up to the old guard, I knew that I'd be taking over as the regimental senior medic. And we did a lot of work to get the medics where they needed to be and operating at the level they should for the regiment. And in doing that, I promoted from E7 to E8, and the regimental commander and sergeant major at the time were looking for somebody to kind of transition over to the Caisson program at that time when they created the detachment. And I was identified as somebody who'd probably be capable of helping kind of really focus on changing and influencing the culture of the Caisson Detachment itself.
Wow. Oh.
Yeah.
Amazing transition. Yeah, that sounds like a laundry list of bucket list things to take on.
Well, I would say too, for our listeners looking into getting into an equine career, skills are transferable in lots of many ways.
Exactly. You're exactly right. Tell us a little bit about the conditions of the stable and the horses when you arrived and sort of where you think things are now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, Julie, you kind of talked about it a little bit in the beginning. Around the time we sustained operations within Arlington, we were kind of a herd of horses that were aging. They were getting up there in terms of what I now know to be the upper end of a horse's working age, being in the 20s. And so a lot of those horses, having spent a lot of time with us and being great animals, were retired as we started kind of bringing new horses in. The stables themselves, Fort Myer is littered with historic buildings, which is great. But at the same time, we all know that they need to be maintained, right? And so they were also being maintained to the standards within the industry, that were very outdated. So although they looked great, sizes of stalls were a little bit on the smaller side for the breed of horses and the size of horses we were using, and with little turnout space, as you kind of already alluded to, the horses were spending a lot of time in their stalls, and so we had to make some and kind of look at things a little bit differently in terms of how do we get these horses out to pasture more often.
Yeah, I mean, so much has changed over the history of the detachment. And in horse care, all types of research, better understanding of how horses and humans interact. What are some of the new things that the old guard has undertaken, and how have you married that with wanting to keep the history and the tradition, but also wanting to make it more current and relevant? I know you've worked with some great people like David O'Connor at the United States Equestrian Federation and Chester Weber, who's an outstanding driver on some of these things. So you've brought in some great knowledge and expertise. So tell us a little bit about what you've undertaken.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've really started, at all levels, from soldiers to tack to the wagons to the breed of horses to the individuals that we have kind of brought on in terms of like an equine advisory board to kind of assist us where we thought maybe we were experts, and kind of I quickly realized we weren't necessarily. So working with, Josh Minshall, Chester Weber, David O'Connor, like you said, Jim Westbrook, bringing Alex on board, allowed us to kind of bring on, almost a board of directors that are experts in the equine industry to help guide us. So we were making the right decision, wisely spending American tax dollars and investing in the areas that we need to in order to improve the program, right? So, one of those areas that I focused on myself was talent management, right? So it's just really focusing on the quality of individual that we were bringing in, and nothing against the average soldier, right? But we wanted to find a soldier who was empathetic, had the aptitude and the attitude to really want to learn what it was like to work with the animals, and then put them into a pipeline that was a little more in depth than what we were doing in the past, right? And so we started developing a formal POI that ran over a period of 12 weeks, which we're still in development with, which David O'Connor has really worked with us on. to take a soldier from pretty much, just like a soldier would enter into the military, take them from, not knowing anything into having some really good basic knowledge over 12 weeks. And, right now our soldiers are coming out of that 12-week program with nearly 250 hours of time in saddle, learning everything from just safety within the stables all the way through, riding at a walk, trot, and canter.
I must say, I feel like I'm very impressed by your guys' transparency during this whole situation and willingness to come to the industry to get advice and ask for help to kind of get the program working the way it should be. And I just, from the industry, big kudos, because I think there's a lot of programs out there that don't necessarily do that when they need to.
Yeah, it's become quite the partnership. I really applaud you guys for availing yourself of all the resources and the expertise that's been out there. I will also add that I've had the real privilege of working with you guys since I became the president of the American Horse Council. Every year we host what's called National Meet a Horse Day down on the Capitol Mall. You guys have always come out and support us. You've brought some horses and you've brought some officers with you, and we're always so moved. And the general public comes up, and many of them have never been close to a horse, and they're so moved when they interact with the soldiers and the officers of the Guard. They hear their personal stories. They hear the stories about the horses. They want to know their names. They want to know their backgrounds, all those kinds of things. They hear that passion you have for the horses and your sincerity and your genuine seriousness for the duty that you have. Talk a little bit about how the soldiers and the officers are chosen for this assignment, because this is a big deal.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, just coming to the Old Guard in general, it's a packet, right? So you have to apply and be accepted into it. More specifically for our program, we've developed some interesting assessment standards that we kind of put the soldiers and officers through, right? So we coming up with a 3-day assessment. We have the individuals put together a packet. We look at them on paper first. What does their background look like? What have they been doing? Are they in good standing? And if everything looks well, we invite them to the assessment. And over that 3-day period, we look at them holistically from physical fitness. And really, we've been trying to focus in physical fitness that's pertinent to horseback riding, right? Or working with the animals, right? And I'll say this, like, I don't need some muscle bound, individual who can bench press, 315 pounds or more. I need somebody with a strong core, leg strength, the ability to sit and saddle for a long period of time. And so we developed what we call the Caisson Physical Fitness Assessment, which really focuses in some of those areas. And we've been collecting data, and we think it's become a pretty good predictor of an individual's ability to endure the 12-week course that we're going to put them through, right? And then lastly, which I think is most important in the assessment, amongst other things, is we do a board where we sit down and kind of just have a conversation with the individuals and kind of just try to tease out some questions we ask them and see how they answer and where they go. And the board will get together and make a determination on whether we felt like they were genuine. And if they're an individual that really meets all the marks, then we'll bring them into the program, which they still have to pass the 12-week course, right? That has weekly written exams as well as in-hand exams that the soldiers are administered, right? So it's not over after the assessment. There's still so much more that they need to focus on to get through the entire program before they would even begin to enter the intermediate training, which is really where they learn mostly about the caisson and the tack and working with the animals.
All of us out here that are horse people are thinking, wow, this is rigorous. Okay. Because I can tell you exactly what you described. Having good core strength, having good posture, having good leg, knowing how to use your aids well, all those things are so critical. And my husband laughs and tells me all the time that when I ride my horse and my trainer says, more leg, he's like, I didn't see your leg move. I said, that's the reason. You need to know. That's how this works.
I can just think about even myself as an equestrian. We're used to long days in the saddle, but I've gone out on a trail ride that's 6 or 7 hours long. And even as a professional, it is exhausting. So I can only imagine what these newbies coming into the tack are signing themselves up for.
Yeah. After 12 weeks, they're saying, did I really need to sign up for this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, during my visit with you guys in July at the stables, I really enjoyed learning about the redesign and the upgrades to the tack and the caisson wagons when we visited the saddlery shop. It's an amazing place. I wish you guys would make a video so that we could share it with the world, because it's just fascinating to see all that. Alex, it appears we kind of got what we like to say is a twofer with you, because you have experience as a saddle tooler and a designer and as a trainer. So what attracted you to this job? What made you say, there's something about this that really resonates with me?
Mostly, I think, when I saw the job listing come up and then learned more about the caisson, a lot of it's, just what the caisson entails as far as those horses performing and, honoring fallen soldiers and kind of, what they do to attribute to each of the soldiers. And then on the leather end of it, just bringing my experience in the leather industry, towards kind of the current problems that they had of saddle fitting and tack fitting, and just kind of utilizing those two skills to, as help as much as I could, within the detachment.
So we talked a little bit about kind of the upgrades the riders and the those on active duty for the caisson have gotten. What kind of upgrades have the horses gotten in terms of equipment and training and things like that?
So they've really gone through really a total overhaul upgrade of new saddles, new tack. A lot of it from the untrained eye will look very familiar. If you didn't know about it, it would look like, exactly kind of what we had in the before, but it's all, from the saddles that we're getting now that are from Circle Y, and they're fitted just exactly for those horses, and then the improved harness that we've gotten, and that, in working with Chester Weber and Josh Minshall and Jim Westbrook, they've kind of really brought their harness expertise to build and design lighter harness, but also harness that takes pressure off those key areas we were having problems with, like on the neck and in the shoulders, those rub spots and those pressure points, kind of redesigning what we had and creating a whole new setup for the caisson.
Yeah, I can so see carrying all that and the frequency that you do your ceremonial events could take a toll, on a horse. So I can see why that equipment upgrades would be so essential. Talk a minute about the herd that you've got right now. What do you look for in a horse to do this job? Now, before you answer me, bear in mind that my phone rings at least once or twice a week with someone who thinks they have the perfect horse to donate to your program. He is dead broken. He is just right for you guys. And so be careful what you ask for. So be specific.
Yeah. So when it comes to purchasing horses, and a lot of the purchasing, we're getting help with Jim Westbrook, our HQE, but they actually go through kind of a similar series of tests that, kind of the soldiers do. They have to be within a certain age range, a certain height range. Our current color that that we're going for is all black, or mainly black. And then they also, when we look at a horse and evaluate them, we have a checklist of things they need to do. They need to be able to ride, walk, trot, canter. They need to be able to be easy to get on and off. They have to be able to drive. So they go through a whole checklist of different tests that they have to go through. But I think most importantly, kind of one of the things we really look for is kind of the overall mind of the horse. I think that's just as important as if they can go through the checklist. Is that horse within the mindset that we think would be good for the cemetery? Because there is a lot that goes on in the cemetery, even though it is kind of a quiet job that they're asked to do. There's anything from gunshots to cannons to flyovers to flags. There's all kinds of stuff. And do we think the horse can mentally handle that? I think is a big thing, because we're not looking for, athletes like in the dressage arena or in the cutting pen. We're looking for that horse that's calm, that can stand for long periods of time, can walk off quietly, and just be good mentally.
Yeah, temperament is so essential regardless of whatever job a horse has. But temperament is like number one. Like, they've got to be able to understand and do the job you need them to do. So I'm totally on point with you.
So we know that the limited space for the horse care at Fort Myer was becoming problematic. Is the housing situation changing? Are they going to be housed on base?
Do you want to answer that?
I think we can kind of both answer that. I think. Yeah, it has. You know, you go ahead and you lead.
So it's, to really explain that, we got to kind of get into how we're looking at the work to rest cycle of the animals and the soldiers in the Caisson Detachment, right? And so we've come up with a 6-week model, right? So the 6-week model would be 3 weeks of work in the cemetery and 3 weeks of a rest conditioning, a recovery conditioning and training cycle for reentry back into the cemetery, right? And so what that means is that a squad of horses would only be spending about 3 weeks at its longest here on Fort Myer, where we have that limited space, right? And then during its 3-week off cycle, it'd be spending time out at right now the Nova Equestrian Center, right in here in Virginia, or what we call the NAC, and then or it will be at our future site, our major land acquisition, which we're hoping we'll execute, within the next year. But why I say that is because we've really looked at what does the model look like for work to rest cycle for the animals as well as the soldiers, right? And so, given that our one of our barns is currently under renovations, where they're going to be expanding the size of the stalls to 12 by 12s, putting down rubber pavers to kind of create a better environment here for the animals. That's a little more spacious. We'll still always be limited by the amount of turnout space that we really have. So they come here right now we keep them here for about a week, where they'll do some training in an environment that somewhat replicates ANC itself, around traffic, around people, around cannons, just like Alex said. And then we rotate them back to the NEC, where they get to kind of hang out there for a couple of weeks. They still do training and conditioning, but they also have a lot more turnout time. So, Alex, I'll hand it back over to you if there's anything you want to add. Yeah, no, it's a lot. Yeah, from when they leave here and then they go out to the neck property, they get some nice time of just hanging out in the fields and just doing the horse thing. But then they also get kind of a good balance of keeping them in work and keeping them mentally stimulated for the job, but yet giving them that time to just kind of relax and be a horse.
Awesome. Okay, guys. So we only got a limited amount of time with you today. So I want to get to this question, which is, what are some of the aspects of your job, of your work, that you really want people to know about? Take this opportunity to really help educate people about what the Caisson platoon and, the old guard's all about.
Yeah, I'll go first, Alex, and I'll hand it over to you, right? Because I think we see things through a different lens, right? I mean, as an active duty soldier and you as a GS employee, we kind of look at things differently, right? Like I've been, as you said in the beginning, and thank you so much for that gracious introduction. I've been to combat, right? And I know what it's like to lay friends to rest. And so for every single soldier in Caisson, even though we're not necessarily, executing operations within ANC right now, it is at the forefront of our mind that we need to honor those who've served this country, right? And the ultimate goal for each of us is to get back into that cemetery. And so each one of the soldiers that we select and put into this program, it is the honor that they are looking forward to be able to do that, right? And so none of these soldiers, come to work on a daily basis looking to harm any of the animals, right? Everyone, shows up and they want to do the best that they can with the resources that we have and that we're given. And I think we're being given a lot right now. And so, it's long days for all these guys. Sometimes the animals are great. Sometimes they're difficult, as everybody knows. But really, it's very rewarding for us to know that one day we're going to be re-entering back into ANC and being able to honor these families. So.
Yeah, and on the horse end of it, what I think is really neat is just seeing as I've gotten more time to work with, the soldiers and this and that, seeing how much they're drawn to their team and their horses, and they really put a lot of care into their team and to their horses, and they they kind of take ownership of them, and really develop a relationship with each horse. They worry about them if there's anything that keeps them from doing a mission, And they really are drawn to each one of them. And then just seeing kind of like how the Army and stuff's really put a lot of attention into the care of the horses. And like I said, they are workhorses. They do need to work. They do need to do a job, but they also they need to have that time to just relax and be a horse. And like everything, from the amount of care that these horses get every day and interaction is really neat to see.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Alex. And I wanted to add on to that what I said, which was the animal husbandry aspect of like the job with the soldiers, right? Each of our squads of soldiers are kind of married to a squad of horses, right? That's who they work with day in and day out, right? They're the ones who prep their tack. They're the ones who do all the maintenance on the animals, from transportation inspections to post-transportation inspections, to working with the vets, with the animals, to picking their stalls every single day. They do kind of truly rely on one another, for everything. So it's really nice to see that, we've really changed a lot in the ways of the program with how the soldiers, work with very specific animals.
I have to say again, when we see you guys down on the National Mall for National Meet a Horse Day, it always amazes me the officers can tell the story of that animal, how it came to you guys, all the things that they've gotten to know about the horse. It's fascinating to see that bond that they've built with that horse. That partnership is it really comes through when they talk about it. Emily, you want the last question?
I mean, there's so many, just because this has been such a great conversation. But I think top of what everybody's mind is when will the Caisson unit return to duty? When can people expect to see the horses again in the cemetery?
Yeah, that's a loaded question, right? That's like really difficult to answer. So,
yeah, hard to pinpoint that one.
It really all depends on who you ask.
You guys are tough. We didn't want to give you a softball to finish it off.
Yeah. It's it seems like every time we kind of try to reapproach, like when will we be back in the cemetery? We look at a different aspect of the program and think, are we ready? Do we really look at all the fine details of everything we need? Because once we enter the cemetery, it's game on. Like, we can't just walk away from that, right? And we don't want to disappoint families because, this relationship is just so us. So there's some gates that we have to meet, that we have to continue to develop with the program, right? One of which I alluded to is, a potential of a major land acquisition, right? That offers us sustainability of the program. And that's really the name of the game. What we don't want to do is put a bunch of Band-Aids on, deep wounds, only to find that, hey, that was just a temporary fix. And so if it seems like I'm being long-winded with this answer, it's because I am, right? Because, we've developed the fourth generation model. And when I say fourth generation, I'm talking about not just horses, but soldiers, right? Getting everybody trained to where they need to be. That puts us on a potential glide path to, mid 2025 of potentially re-entering. But again, the dates that we need to meet or pass before we can do that, right? And I think that's what we're kind of hoping for, but I don't want to get everybody's hopes up and think, hey, May, June timeframe, that's when we're going to be back. That's kind of the goal we're shooting for. We'll look to see it, we'll have to reapproach that and see how that turns out.
I think it's also really honorable that you guys are willing to take your time to do it right and not just rush it to get the horses back out there for the public to see that you guys are taking the time, you're checking the boxes, you're doing it right, and you're putting the horses first, which I think is what it's important.
Yeah, I was going to say, I really appreciate your candor and your transparency about this. Again, folks, I was out there. I'm so impressed with the hard work they're putting into this. They're not skipping any steps here. They're really being thorough about this. And so I'm going to close by saying thank you for your service. We really, really appreciate the work that you guys do and everything you've put into this. And thanks for spending time with us today. And listeners, there'll be some more information in the show notes. If you want to look them up and learn more about the Caisson platoon, you can find that on their website. So you'll get some things about that. So, gentlemen, thank you again. We really appreciate your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Emily.
Yep. Thank you.
This segment is brought to you by the American Horse Council's Health Committee, whose charter is to monitor health-related issues that are of a concern to the horse industry, including, but not limited to, developments or industry-driven initiatives regarding equine health, import-export, or state or federal regulations related to equine health, and identify and prioritize concerns and opportunities, evaluate related information, and determine actions or activities that may be appropriate.
This week, the regulatory sphere for our regulatory update is buzzing about screwworm. And the big question the Horse Council has been asking is, are we screwed? And so what we want to tell everybody is New World screwworm is a really nasty parasite that the United States, very excitingly, effectively eliminated decades ago. And they did this using a really cool project with genetically sterile flies. So they bred a bunch of screwworm flies, made them sterile, and then released them. And it basically just eliminates the entire breeding population. So we eliminate the fly. Screwworm is a major health and welfare issue in many countries, and this includes several in South America. The U.S. in general has worked with South American countries to establish a barrier of these sterile flies in Panama. But unfortunately, the news is that the sterile fly barrier has kind of been slowly failing for unknown reasons. And for the first time, screwworm was detected in southern Mexico earlier this month. And this is a big deal because screwworm is scary because the larva, which is a very polite term for maggots, feed on living tissue, which is unlike the flies we currently have that feed on kind of dead tissue. So it's really imperative that we keep screwworm out of the U.S. as it could very easily kind of decimate not just our national horse herd, but it infects all animals, dogs, cats, other livestock species. People can get it, which like major yuck. And it can cause kind of really major economic impacts to the industry overall as well. So to help protect the U.S. has closed the Mexican-U.S. border to all livestock imports. And this is what they're doing. Stopping the imports is really necessary until we can get a better livestock import protocol for screwworm kind of happening at the Mexican border. So we actually had a very fresh update earlier this morning, straight from USDA, that they're working with Mexico to establish these new protocols. And hopefully, listeners, by the time you hear this, some livestock import for cattle at bare minimum will have started in early January. And hopefully all livestock imports, including for horses, is open again by the end of January. It's also really important to remember that USDA and the American Horse Council recognize that there are an untold number of what we call illegal imports happening across the Mexico border. And we are working to address this, as well as stray horses and burros and other livestock that just don't read maps very well and can cross the Rio Grande without permission. And because the goal is to keep screwworm out of the country, we all need to do our part. And so this means that in terms of illegal imports, it's really important to know that horses of all levels can be imported illegally. So this is from your dead broke 4-H'ers to FEI dressage horses. This includes horses born and raised in South America and Europe and Africa. So it's really important that to make sure any imported horse you purchase has appropriate documentation that that horse was imported using proper protocols and has gone through the appropriate quarantine period and has received its ivermectin treatment, especially if they're coming from a screwworm country, which now includes Mexico. USDA has really great information on what to look for in screwworm infestations, and this includes maggots and wounds that won't heal, especially around the genitals and umbilical cords of new foals. And if you see anything suspicious, you should call your vet right away. We've put the link to the USDA screwworm announcement in the show notes, but you can also check out the American Horse Council website and Facebook to keep current on the situation as it develops. So USDA, like we said, they are expanding their sterile fly program. We're really hoping, we kind of squash this thing out right away really quick. But again, it's really important that everyone kind of pitches in, keeps an eye out, makes sure we are importing our horses legally and purchasing our imported horses legally. So stay healthy out there and let's keep our horses healthy too.
Thank you for joining us today. We'll provide more numbers and links in our show notes. We invite you to support our beloved industry and join the American Horse Council and earn a free subscription to our monthly newsletter, which shares the latest in all legislative happenings, federal and state, as well as more information that horse owners like you need to know.
Follow the American Horse Council on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter, and LinkedIn. And you can also subscribe to this podcast's RSS feed. You can subscribe to Horses in the Morning on any podcast player and find all the shows, including ours, on the Horse Radio Network at horseradionetwork.com.
And as we like to say, we are #here for horses. Happy New Year.